Welcome to Engaging Leaders, a Leadership Maryland podcast brought to you by Beacon at Salisbury University and BFG Financial Advisors. Since 1992, Leadership Maryland has been connecting and empowering leaders through transformational experiences, dialogue, and education. Each month, we host candid conversations to promote positive outcomes in your organizations and communities. I'm your host, Eric Brotman, and I'm joined by perhaps the one guest in the Leadership Maryland community who truly needs no introduction, and I get to do this anyway. Eliot Pfanstiehl, you are now on my bus, sir. I get to drive the bus today. Essentially, Eliot is all things leadership. He has been a part of Leadership Maryland. He was the founding president of Maryland Leadership Workshops. He's been program facilitator for Leadership Montgomery, Leadership Allegany, Leadership Washington County, Leadership Southern Maryland, and he was in the inaugural class of Leadership Washington. The man just oozes leadership. He also built Strathmore as the founder of the Strathmore Hall Foundation and the CEO, and built a world-class music center. He's also a world-class gentleman. Eliot, welcome to the show.
Wow, I just don't know if I can recover from that introduction.
It pained me to say that. I want you to know that was really tough for me. No, it really wasn't. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad to hear your voice. We've all of us, as part of Leadership Maryland, have been hearing your voice for many, many years, and it's fun that I get to do the questioning and you get to do the responding today. So let's start a little bit with your love of not only our state and lots of parts of our state, but also the leadership organizations within the state. I don't know anyone who maybe has more familiarity with more of them than you do.
Leadership became a theme, if you will, in my life. Way back, elementary school, I was the captain of the safety patrols, but no one's ever actually heard that before. Going on through the usual things in student councils and so forth, I met Maryland Leadership Workshops, which is a program that we're very proud of, which basically took kids off to a college campus for a week, about 100 of them in a week, and would, from all over the state of Maryland, and they would study leadership skills, and they would be exposed for the first time to others who had leadership capacity and interest like themselves. Now that doesn't sound real strange, but in fact leaders are rather lonely. They're not like everyone else. They have a hard time talking about what they do without sounding boastful, so mostly they don't talk about it. But the fact that you can put 100 of them on campus changed self-esteem. And I went through that program. I became the director of that program. I incorporated that program, and later it actually merged into Leadership Maryland. My experience with Leadership Maryland, they came to my work site, Strathmore, one day in their first year, and they did a session there, and I was intrigued by this program. I'd been part of and grown through Leadership Montgomery, and I didn't believe that a leadership program at the state level could have anywhere near the impact of a single county. It's just too big a community. But I will say I was dead wrong on that, and I have asked forgiveness for that sin for years since then, because in fact you can form a sense of belonging and allegiance and loyalty to a group of people who are more spread out. Helps a lot to have all of our telecommunications tools. But you can now do that for an entire state, and I think it has changed the life of Maryland in ways we never anticipated way back in the early days.
The organization has grown over what is almost 30 years. We'll be planning a 30th celebration sometime soon, hopefully. And over that period of time, there are about 1,200 folks who've gone through the program, if I'm not mistaken, who are in every walk of life and who have, for me, it was perhaps the most diverse community I'd ever been a part of. I grew up in a much more homogeneous way, and although college was not that way, I would say that Leadership Maryland brought a diversity of perspectives and backgrounds and all the different ways that you could describe diversity. And I actually think it created inclusion before that was a thing.
Yeah, it's really much more Noah's Ark than it is Kiwanis Club. It is our delight to find people of various geographies and interests and politics and theologies and mix them all together in a big mixing pot and then run them all over the state. Because over time, they start off in their shells, but very quickly those break down over meals in the evenings, And the qualitative discussions of a group of people who sleep together, literally, almost literally, and travel the state together you can't replicate that in a one-day program. I kind of doubt you can even replicate it all together on Zoom, but it is a quantitatively different community that you can join through this program than probably almost any other ones I can think of. Certainly much closer than a work community, certainly much closer than a school community. So I think it almost accidentally, but now reliably, produces a group of people who are connected in ways that may last them their entire lives.
Every class that's gone through, of which I'm aware, believes themselves to be the best class ever. That it's a running joke. Of course, it's not true because 2009 beat everybody out in that department. And Renee would say 05, I realize that, but she's mistaken. At the end of the day, every class has its own theme, its own vibe. But you're right, these are lifelong, not only friendships, but they're lifelong ways to plug into different networks, to plug into different causes, to find things that unify us and get us excited about making a difference in really positive ways. I actually think it's the greatest think tank ever created, and it's one where almost anything you need. I think Leadership Maryland should be called Kevin Bacon, because we are now, fewer degrees of separation from the answer to everything, at least within our state's borders and quite possibly beyond, than ever before.
Well, that's nicely put. I think the people that get the highest value out of the program are the ones that have figured out during the year and soon thereafter how to use the network. So if I'm doing anything at a statewide level, I've got 5 different people I can call, and they will pick up the phone or email immediately. They will get me the resources, the people, the contacts. They will open the doors. They will do things for me that you just don't expect to have done by technically strangers. And so if you're in any state enterprise or even a local enterprise and you just want to see how the people on the other side of the state are solving the problems you're solving, there simply is no more efficient talent bank that you can go to. And the only reason it works is because you've already got the key to their heart, and you found it in the experiences of the program.
So without divulging any individuals, you've seen it all over a couple of decades, and we certainly don't want to embarrass anyone on our podcast. But let's talk about what some of the most transformational experiences maybe you've witnessed have been in an anonymous way, where you've seen examples of either individuals or classes or groups or outcomes attributable to this experience.
Well, first, and apolitically, I've seen individuals who, at their own volition, it's not anything we did, but they come up to me and they say, Eliot, I'd like to talk to the class for a second. And so on day 2 at the morning gathering before we start our day, they would announce that they're handling a family crisis, that they just want people to know about it because they know that they're going to get a fair amount of valuable counseling, so to speak, informal, from the group. We had one woman who announced that she had cancer. We had another man that said he had to have a brain tumor removed. The outpouring of love from the group is just incredible, and none of that is ever written about in our literature. And rarely is it reported for HIPAA reasons, if nothing else. But that's the level of intimacy that's developed. On a more practical level, any statewide initiative that needs people from Western Maryland to Eastern Shore to Southern Maryland to the Baltimore region can quickly develop a statewide network of informants and participants, and if need be, voters who will come out. Everybody learns their way to Annapolis during the program, who will come out and support, testify on behalf of, write letters to, call their friends for, whatever the cause is that you put out there. Now, those causes are not adopted by Leadership Maryland. Those are still independent choices of the independent individuals. We're extremely careful in the program never to become the flack for any political ideology other than perhaps the U.S. Constitution. And beyond that, the individual makes their own choice as to whether to play or not play. But when they want to play, when you have appealed to some greater good within their soul, they come out like champs. And it's extraordinary. I mean, we've done it all. I mean, there have been initiatives regarding marijuana. There have been initiatives regarding states' rights, certain localities are looking for a way to get their jurisdiction to adopt either a new tax or some kind of a new reform, and they quickly contact somebody who's already done it. And it's extraordinary to watch happening right before your eyes, and it's completely magical. Renee and I get a lot of credit for things that happen as if we really planned that they would happen. To be honest with you, we do water the grass, but if the seed grows, it grows. And that's the joy, that's the magic, that's the unpredictability of Leadership Maryland.
Eliot, I just want to mention that you, within 30 seconds, brought up marijuana, seeds, and grass. So just for the record, all of that came up at once, so there's a definite theme of the show.
You got
I'm teasing,
me.
Of course. I'm teasing. I would never. So all of these transformational experiences happen, and people who were already engaged in lots of different ways come together. And many of them sort of, I think, have myopic views, and I don't say that to be critical. I say it to be observant, I hope, about the area in which they spend most of their time when they arrive. And almost like the healing of macular degeneration, it just sort of opens this panorama of other perspectives and ideas and outcomes and issues. And I know for me, this was a completely transformative experience. And I know I'm not alone. What is the formula? I mean, I don't want your secret sauce. This is not the Big Mac recipe or anything, but what is the formula for getting people to get as intimate and as open as they do? Maybe it is the sort of breaking bread together, the spending a couple days together. I think it's more than that. I think you could put a lot of people in the room for 2 days and not have that outcome. What is the formula that really you think has made the difference?
I think it starts at opening retreat when we try to break down the assumptions of where the heck am I? What am I going to get out of this? I mean, we go right at the fact that leadership is not magic, that it's not something that you got and other people don't have. I mean, my own, and I've been criticized for this, my own proclivity is that just about anybody can become a better leader than they start off being if they understand what leadership really is. Leadership is not just power. Many people confuse that. Leadership is a reciprocal process. It takes you and someone else to accomplish. You can't do it all on your own. In fact, your goal is to find the other people who can enable the vision that you have and create a new reality using other people. So leadership is a reciprocal process. It mobilizes resources. It doesn't just talk about things. Stuff happens. Money moves around. New people come in. Physical jurisdictions and facilities and roads are built and change. So if you can't see it from 8 miles up in a balloon, you could be talking all you want to, but it ain't leadership until you're actually mobilizing resources. And it can only exist when there's competition and conflict on the ideas. For me to just stand up and state, this is how it shall be, believe me, and trust just my judgments, it won't work. You've got to adopt it, and we've got to wrestle over the harder issues until we get a common denominator, a common language, a common set of values that actually fuels all of our action. And that's simply not the perception many people have who think it's some kind of magic elixir that you drink and it's all over. And finally, I can believe all I want to as the leader in the goals, but unless you believe them as the follower, we don't have a compact, an action compact. So there's some very specific things that leadership is, and there's some very specific things leadership is not. And that is a part of the opening retreat. It's something I come back to all the time. And it actually is part of, we do debriefs at the end of each session, which is, so what did you think about today? Not whether you agreed or didn't agree, or whether you liked the speaker or not. What got through to you? And hopefully those are the things that last, a lifetime in their souls.
Our class had some pretty interesting experiences, things that, I get to talk to the various classes every year and share these experiences. And some of them are the ways in which we've connected since graduation. I would argue that the idea of graduating from a program like this isn't the end, it's the beginning. You now have some of the tools, some of the resources, maybe some of the strategies of critical thought that and plus the network I think it's the beginning, and I think anyone who attends any of these types of programs and then doesn't really plug in and utilize it afterwards has, in some ways, missed an opportunity and maybe missed the boat entirely, or missed the bus in our case. What, in terms of engagement afterwards, there's a great spectrum between people who plug into everything and people you never hear from again. Is there a common denominator or or any type of indicator in terms of the folks who have thoroughly embraced the community? Is there a common?
Some people
please.
just hope that coming out of it, there will be moments for them to get together with the class again for the social aspect of it, and I don't have a problem with that. The ones that last the longest are ones that start something new or get more adherence to what they were doing. They build their own capacity through multiplying it by the energies and interests of others. So the ones that stick around the longest, I think, are the ones that have found other value in the program that they then carry on and keep working and spreading. If you just went through the program and you expect to do, one Zoom call a year and call that, life, that's probably not, I think, the best use of your experience. That experience that you had in the program, what you've learned, but more how you learned it and how other people experienced and transmit their leadership. That's what you're really studying, is models of other leaders. And we put the strangest array of leaders in front of our class every year. I mean, from small town mayors to business people to civic activists to individual entrepreneurs. We bring them all, and the question that everybody should be watching for is, how are they doing what they're doing? What leadership currency and vocabulary are they using? Some of which I can steal, and some of which I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. But that's the valuable lesson, and it can't be taught in a book. It can't be taught on handouts. And if you have a lot of those experiences over the course of your year, it should whet your appetite for doing the same thing on your own, in your own world and life. There are county programs or statewide programs. They all have the same model, which is go in and look. Don't just sit on the outside. And I think that's the value. That's the lasting value.
So the how is resources, skills, people, talent, so forth, maybe even attitude. But what about the why? I mean, I think we spend an awful lot of time figuring out our own whys and hearing the whys of some of these other people. So why did you start this enterprise, this company, this activism, this outreach, this program? The whys, I think, are probably even more compelling than the hows. Do you think?
Eric, you get an A+. I didn't know you had studied this so carefully, because you put your finger right on it. It's the why. It's all about the why. There's so many different hows out there, but the why takes you back to some really primal, basic value statements that if you haven't answered them for yourself, no one else can do it for you. There's a particular thing that I like to do in the program. I don't know if they'll keep doing it, but I hope so, which is to ask the question, so look, all of you are very successful people. I mean, there's 50 of you in the room. You all have the greatest bios and resumes and, accomplishments to date. It's how you got in the room. But what significance are you trying to create for others? Because I can be successful for myself. I can be successful even for my employees and my family. But if I haven't done something that actually benefits others, what's my significance? And frankly, it's a thesis that I'd lay out there at the opening retreat, and at the closing retreat, people finally get the idea, we really got to go there. And the best experiences I've ever had related to me are people that get in touch with me after the program and say, I went out and I took this and I did this, which benefits others in this way. And that's what I love hearing. Because to get out of ourselves and to have great success for ourselves, but use it to create significance, my life is significant by doing good for others, that is the final grade on the program. And you cannot go through this alone and come out alone and have gotten out of it what you really should put into it, which is the value you bring to helping other people improve their life.
To me, Leadership Maryland, and frankly, a lot of the programs, but specifically Leadership Maryland, is an entirely too well-kept secret. And I know we're trying to change that, and I would love for you to talk about maybe some of the things that, and certainly this Engaging Leaders podcast is one of them, but some of the things to suggest that we are, in fact, a go-to organization of thought leaders and doers and leaders and not just accomplishers, but people who are mission-driven and all have any mission you can think of is within our directory, so to speak. How do we tell this story without telling it over 9 months? It's got to be like a Cliff Notes version, and they never do justice to the real thing. But how do you do it?
Boy, if I had that answer, I think I'd get Renee's job, wouldn't I? The problem here is that
we're keeping Renee, Elliot. we're keeping Renee. Her job is very secure.
Believe me, of all people in the world, I am the first to want to keep Renee. But I can tell you that taking 50 people a year is never going to do it. We haven't built the front door that invites others in for continuing value. All we have is a group of people that have walked through the door once, then they've gone on the bus, then they've gotten off the bus, and that's going to always be too small a population to spread the word in a big way. We've been very careful not to take political stances, so we can't use that. And to some degree, the people that go through our program and we burn them out on how much time they're missing from work, it's harder and harder for them to get out again and engage in that way. One of our partners, our members, told me years ago that he's never told his wife that he's quit the program. That way he gets 2.5 days every month to go off and think great thoughts. That might be one way to do it, to create the continuation, but we weren't built to be a megaphone for anything particular. We are built to be a family that helps each other solve problems, again, to create significance for our community. And if we were to ask the question of the state, although independently of individuals and groups, what significance would you like to see created in your community that will change the quality of life for your citizens? I think it would be a better question than, what can Leadership Maryland do for you? We often look like an issues group, and it's just a matter of like getting Newsweek or something. Boy, that dates me. of getting a subscription to a regular ongoing news source. That's not what we are. What we are is people who have taken a problem, wrestled mightily with it, come out the other end, and the best they can do is say, here's how I did it. I can't tell you how to do it, but here's how I did it, and it's here for you to learn if you want it. It's not an easy answer, Eric, and I wrestle with it, as you know, with the board and on a regular basis. But it is, I think we have value. We haven't found a way to explain to other people.
So we can't do an episode of Engaging Leaders in our first full season without talking about 2020, as much as none of us want to anymore. This year has been. It has been to say it's been a challenge is not fair. It's been tragic for many people, but it's also been a catalyst for at least the most rapid change I can think of in my near 5 decades on the planet. I liken it to the way travel changed after 9/11. It happened very, very quickly and very, very permanently. We're seeing a lot of that now, and I think we've gotten to a point now where we have this K recovery, and I don't mean just economics. I mean in terms of life. There are people who have been thriving through this, and it's changed their lives for the better, and not just financially, but in other ways. And then there's other folks who were dangerously close to an abyss and are now free falling. What in the world what are the takeaways from 2020? Have you seen some things maybe come out of this year that give you pause or give you hope or give you feelings that, the cream of the leadership group, if nothing else, is going to rise to the top and face what is truly an unprecedented situation?
Best cartoon I've seen is the Back to the Future guys, the mad scientist and Marty, the young guy. And scientist is sitting in his time machine car and the door is open and Marty's leaning in and the scientist says, "Marty, whatever you do, don't dial up 2020.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
That explains where we have been. And I must say, I'm wrestling with the same thing everybody else is. I think that there's also, though, a whole new set of tools, not the least of which is what we're talking on right now, is, through screens and through podcasts. It's a new way to communicate. The problem I have with it is it minimizes the best aspects of what Leadership Maryland is, which is putting 50 people in a room and letting them go at it. And until that's solved, and that may require a vaccine, frankly. I mean, I do agree with the people that say we can't correct the country till we cure this illness. And once that's done, maybe we can come back together again. And in the meantime, we're just sort of treading water, hoping that everything hangs together. I don't have the answer to this. This is the biggest thing in my life, just like it is in yours and everybody else's. But it has basically redefined my lifelong work of bringing people together. I mean, Strathmore, the music center with 1,200 seats, is closed. And there's no art happening there because people can't gather. I can't tell you the COVID crisis and rate of despair that it's brought to the arts. And the same thing is true of people coming together in community. When we're not allowed to come together, it's extremely hard. And even if you come together but you're electronic, it isn't the same thing by any means. So I think we got to first cure it, and then we got to figure out new ways to come together. But I think the hunger to come together, once it's safe, is going to be extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. And it could be a rebirth for all organizations who are dealing with come together as a community to solve problems. This is not going to be about people individually going off and doing terribly brave things in quiet, dark corners. It'll be turning on the lights, inviting the world back in the room, and re-engaging. And there'll be a generation of people that don't know how to engage with groups. They're just going to miss it. I feel so sorry for the kids that are missing experiences as a group. I certainly feel sorry for all the musicians and playwrights and actors and dancers that can't even get a stage together. But all of that will change when we get a vaccine, because we will, and life can get back to normal. Meanwhile, got to keep marching.
Yeah, no, it's the arts have been impacted, education's been impacted, kids have been impacted, families have been impacted, businesses. I mean, I don't think anyone is, I hate to use the word immune, it sounds cliche, but I don't think anyone is exempt from the impacts of all of this. And, the great unknown is really the time frame. Leadership Maryland had to skip a year. And that's, first of all, it left a void for me, and I wouldn't even have been in the class, but it left a void for me because it always felt like spring and new. I'm sure that's the way college professors feel about freshman year. The new faces come on campus and you're ready to go. And I know for you, having facilitated hundreds of retreats, but also several dozen full years of these programs, you must see in the opening the difference between the way everybody communicates in the opening retreat and the ending retreat. You'd think it was 10 years. And it's only been 7-8 months.
That's exactly right.
Getting people together has never been more important, and it feels awkward. We're used to shaking someone's hand or giving somebody a hug or embracing and feeling communal with folks. And Eliot, I'm a hugger. It just is what it is, and this has been tough for me in that because I feel very separate from people. And this is not your therapy session. You don't need to do that. But I'm with you that we'll eventually congregate again. And I'm also with you, I think, that the appetite for that will never be higher. I do worry about the folks who are going to either have to relearn or experience for the first time what that is, because there may be a great deal of trepidation.
I'm actually working on a project with Montgomery County Public Schools to build an arts high school. It'll take 5 more years, but as of about 2 months ago, we've agreed that the real job of this school is to reintroduce congregate arts to kids who never knew it. Because that's, this could be 2-3 years long, where an entire generation of kids who normally would be in their group bands and choruses and musical shows and whatever, orchestras, are not going to know the experience and will not be used to listening to the player, next door. And the various things that we learn in a social setting that simply don't exist in isolation. I think in a way it'll be a whole new challenge for those of us who teach such things and who depend upon the social learning group to reinvent how we do that. And boy, I'll tell you one thing, I will never take for granted again people being able to congregate.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. So this year, you mentioned briefly that this was the year of your own retirement. And I don't believe in retirement as a disappearing act or a retreat. I believe in it as a graduation to the next stage of life, and I have no doubt that that's what you're working on. In fact, it sounds like you're already working on massive projects. I'm not the least bit surprised. But I had the great privilege of sitting at Strathmore and watching the production that was put on in your honor when you retired. And I have to say, number one, if that wasn't perhaps the greatest tribute to a human being put on by people who were more than coworkers, but were like family and dear friends, it was something really special to behold. It was obvious how touched you were. How could you not be? You must have left such an unbelievable impact. We talk about significance. If that isn't the highlight of significance brought to you by folks in every chapter of your life, I've never seen anything like it. So I tip my hat to you, sir. You've impacted so many lives in such a positive way that you literally had your own big band send-off. Amazing.
Yeah,
Truly.
I could never have afforded that production.
Well, you did build the place. You're allowed to do that.
Including, you noticed I had my family all got up there and played a song. I can tell you they didn't get paid. But it was simply extraordinary. It was the greatest gift anyone could have given me, and I saw literally my life flash before my eyes and yours, and I was stunned by it. It's funny because I have a tape and various pictures of that night, and all it takes is just seeing one of them, and the whole thing comes back. But the thing about that night was the number of people that just came up and said, "You changed my life." And I can tell you right now that it was never an intention of mine to change anyone's life. I was just trying to change the world in which my life was playing out. But the number of people that it rubbed off on, it helps to have a huge music hall, to get them in. But it was, I was stunned by how much that was the comment, even more than, "Gee, you built a nice concert hall." Because the fact is, that's the significance.
Well, it's an amazing thing. So let's talk about Eliot 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever iteration you're on now. You talked about the art school in Montgomery County, truly an amazing idea, and probably one that's overdue. I know there's at least one in the Baltimore metro area, and I certainly know they exist elsewhere. What are the things that you're going to devote the most passion and energy to in the next couple of years?
There's various things going on, and I'll tell you quite a secret. People call and say, "Eliot, will you be on our board of directors?" Well, I'm not stupid. I know what that means. That means, will you come on and bring your fundraising with you? Because I've done a lot of fundraising through Strathmore. And honestly, that's the last thing I want to do, is go on a board and just raise money for a cause, especially if it wasn't a cause that in some way I helped create. So it's unlikely it's going to be a board of directors just for the sake of it. Leadership Maryland, by the way, is the exception to that. Renee, just noting. I am theirs forever. But I think that the most interesting thing to me is something that'll live on beyond me, is starting something that can grow bigger on its own. Now, Strathmore is going to live on beyond me once they pay back the huge amount of debt that they've had to incur. And the various programs that this new high school will do will live on beyond me. And I think what I can bring to that is experience of what it was before COVID now that they can get back to. I've had a couple of other things that I've been toying with. I honestly haven't found the thing. I fill my days for the most part with, these days with election stuff, but on a normal basis, my wife and I have gotten reacquainted lovingly, and we play a lot, and we enjoy each other a lot. I've got 4 kids. I have my first grandson now down in North Carolina, and of course travel is greatly restricted. And I'm actually at a retirement point where I don't have to do anything. And that's an extraordinary feeling. I mean, in all of my life, I've never had the ability to say, I don't want to do that, and not do it. I've always had to do whatever I put up on the calendar. When COVID hit, I literally had to erase my entire calendar of the year. So I'm basically, you could say, rebuilding it. And I'm open to opportunities. As you have in Leadership Maryland, I just wrote a sort of a farewell piece about being on the bus. But at the end, it says that if you have a cause to which you're devoted and you need some help, some excitement, some energy about how to get it going, let me know, because I'd be happy to talk to anybody who has a dream that I can ride rather than me necessarily owning the whole dream. That may just be a nod to age taking its toll, but I'd be happy to ride other people's dreams if they're exciting and if I can find a passion within myself to support them. But I have no interest, no need anymore to do legacy things that'll somehow aggrandize to my name. I'd much rather help other people get things that they're passionate about and that they will carry on.
Last question. If you had to offer one tip, one idea, one strategy to folks who are listening about how to grow leadership acumen, how to become a better leader, something timeless, not something COVID related, but something timeless, what would that be?
Well, the simplest one I can think of, and probably the most impactful, is listen first, then speak. I think as sort of, quote, natural leaders or leaders that seem to feel like, they should have the answers, we tend to leap to the front and start spewing out words, which has maybe nothing to do with what the conversation should be about, and certainly not anything to do with the interests of the person we're talking to. So go out and listen first, and then let silence happen, and listen a little more, and let silence happen. And you'll know at the right point where if you have something to contribute, you should add it, and then you should. But change the paradigm of leaders speak first and all the time. And I would very much like to see that be the practice of people who are interested in creating value for others and not just for themselves. It's so simple. Actually, it's incredibly hard if you're like me and you just always want to talk.
That's partly what makes you such a great guest for a podcast. We're going to have you back and hear about what you're doing post-COVID with the grandkid and the art school and everything else. I can't thank you enough for sharing your insights with us. I said in the beginning of the show that you're a world-class gentleman. It's 100% true. And who knew you started as a safety patrol officer in elementary school? So this really did start early. That's my big takeaway today, for sure. I tease, of course, but at the end of the day, you're not only a consummate gentleman, but you are loved by literally all in Leadership Maryland, and we appreciate you and all you've done over the quarter century or so of involvement. And we anxiously await the next chapter in your life and are glad that we're going to be along the ride and be on that bus with you, sir.
Well, Eric, I can tell you right now that doing this podcast with you has been one of the greater honors of my life, because I have esteemed you as my fearless leader in leadership, and since then. And you're just proving the fact that you don't need to hold office to be effective and useful. And I think what you're doing with this program in particular is incredibly valuable. So thank you, sir. And you do owe me the bottle of wine.
It is coming. We have to decide what kind of wine, and I have to be there to enjoy it with you, so we have to be able to congregate. I'll bring
Deal.
2 bottles.
Make it
How's
red.
that? I promise. I promise. Thank you all for listening to Engaging Leaders, a Leadership Maryland podcast brought to you by Beacon at Salisbury University and BFG Financial Advisors. This is your host, Eric Brotman, reminding you to stay engaged. And like Eliot said, listen first. Be sure to tune in for new content every month.
You've been listening to Engaging Leaders, a Leadership Maryland podcast. Leadership Maryland is the foremost statewide organization where critical conversations occur in an environment of trust and civility to facilitate actionable change. For more information, visit us at www.engagingleaderspodcast.com. Please subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.